Build Back Better bill is passed.
Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the second count of the information, Richard McGinnis, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the third count of the information, unknown male, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the fourth count of the information, Anthony Huber, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the fifth count of the information, Gage Grosskreutz, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty.
And happy Saturday, and welcome to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Saturday, November 20th, 2021. We're so glad you decided to come back and join us this week. We got so much stuff to cover, folks. The Rittenhouse verdict, Build Back Better passing, a whole bunch of stuff you saw in the opening montage. I'm not going to waste any time, but I got a secret guest. It's somebody we all know and love, Dr. Nicole McFarlane from Fayetteville State University. Dr. McFarlane, welcome back to The Deal.
It's good to be back. It's good to be back. Thank you.
And of course, as always, Val Atkinson, formerly of North Carolina Central University School of Political Science. Thanks, Val, for coming back in today.
Absolutely.
Val and Nicole, we're going to jump right into this. You saw in the opening montage, that last clip, 5 not guilty verdicts for Kyle Rittenhouse. We'll give you the floor first, Dr. McFarlane, since it's been a while since you've been here. Did you expect anything different from the outcome in the Rittenhouse case? And if you did, what was it that you expected?
Unfortunately, well, as your question sort of leads me to at least imply that I did not expect much. The reason I didn't expect much more was because of the mother's involvement in that and how they treated him as a child. But the adult that was in charge of this child was never held. She's not been held accountable for what I understand is arming an underage minor, driving him over state lines, and his then committing murder, in my opinion, what I consider murder. I think if it was a Black mother who drove from Illinois to Wisconsin after arming her child with a weapon, a deadly weapon, and then dropping him off in the middle of a civil unrest event, I'm sure she would have been at least held to account by child endangerment and child neglect services in that area. Unfortunately, this woman completely is held as a hero, as her son is held as a hero. She just led the great man to the moment, and Kyle stepped up as a hero. Obviously, I'm being facetious, but it's not something I'm surprised about. Actually, I was picking up a pizza. I have a gluten-free pizza thing I was doing, and I was picking it up, and and I happened to have to go to the bar to pick it up, and it was yesterday while the verdict was being read. And this older gentleman, he said he was 64, and he was saying, "Oh, it was just so much nicer before. I just wish, people are so angry now. I wish it was back in good old days." And I was like, in the good old days, I couldn't even sit at this lunch counter with you, let alone, disagree with you about the outcome of this verdict. And he just looked at me like I was the rudest person in the world. I took my pizza and left. But, that's the kind of conversation I think we're going to have. One more thing I want to say.
Yeah, sure. I
think that it sends a clear signal to white folk, right? That that transracial, multiracial movements, dissident movements will not be tolerated in the United States. That it tells white folk who were, on the front lines of the 2020 protests that that they will be that they can be killed easily without any sort of repercussions or consequences to their assailant.
Yeah, that is so sobering, so Val, you hear Dr. McFarlane there. Again, I'll ask you, what was your first thoughts, and if you can expound on those.
Well, it confirmed what my suspicion was. And I had said all along that I expected Rittenhouse to be exonerated or let go because of the makeup of the jury. But the thing that got me thinking along those lines most was the instructions from the judge and his role in all of this. He did some things, dressing down the DA a couple of times when the jury was not present, but once in particular when the jury was present. And the information that he gave them instructive, I didn't think that there was a chance that the DA could gain a conviction here. And it came out to be, in my assessment, that the 25 hours were taken mainly trying to get some one juror to come along with the not guilty verdict that the other 11 had come to. And only time will tell who that one or few jurors were to hold them up for 25 hours. Because I think the majority of them, they were ready to go not guilty from Jump Street.
Yeah, from the time the trial started. I want to remind the folks you're watching The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That is Dr. Nicole McFarlane and Val Atkinson. We're trying to make sense of a world that makes no sense most weeks. And we're talking about the Rittenhouse trial. You know, just my first take on it, Val and Nicole, is that throughout the trial, the judge did insert himself in ways that reminded me of what happened in Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia, North Carolina and South Carolina, when white men were on trial for doing something bad, and we knew what the outcome was going to be, and the judge was just trying to navigate to that end point, right? There's no real trial going on. The judge spends a lot of time excoriating the prosecution for even bringing the case. So I'll leave it there, but I want to jump to another case that's going on. This one in Georgia, Val, and I'll start with you this time. The McMichaels down in Brunswick County, Georgia, Glenn County, for killing Ahmaud Arbery. Have you been keeping track of that, and what's your thoughts on how that's going compared to the Rittenhouse trial?
I have been keeping track of that, and that was my other guess, I guess we could call them now. My prediction here is that I think Travis McMichaels and his dad, Gregory, at least the two of them, will be found guilty on at least a couple of charges. I don't think they will walk away like Rittenhouse happened to walk away from this whole thing. You know, in my background research I was doing, some of you know Ed, I like to do this kind of stuff. I found something rather interesting. There was the case back in the 20s where there was a gentleman by the name of Harlan Carter, who at the age of 17 came home and caught his mom crying. And he said, "What are you crying about?" Says, "There were some Hispanics," and they didn't use that nice word, outside, and they just wouldn't leave me alone. And I got scared, and it was horrible. So he got his shotgun and went down to the place that Hispanics hung out at that time and asked what was going on. So one of the Hispanics pushed the shotgun out of the way and he shot him. He shot him and he claimed self-defense. And of course, he went on and he had a trial, but he was convicted, but he was later exonerated. But this same guy, that's half of the story. This same guy named Carter, Harlan Carter, he went on to be a part of the Border Patrol because that's where his dad worked. He ran that for a while. As a matter of fact, he was the INS director for 4 years, right? And he got out of all of that at one point, and he matriculated over to be the national director for the NRA, the National Rifle Association. He was the guy that changed the National Rifle Association from some 4-H club knockoff to the political mammoth that they are today. He is credited for all of that. And he started by taking a shotgun and killing some brown people. He approached them and said, "You need to go back with me and explain to my mom and let her ask you questions. I'm making a citizen's arrest." And the guys wouldn't move, so he shot him. I said, what a coincidence here between Rittenhouse and McMichaels and this guy named Carter. So I thought I'd bring that to you. I thought it was interesting reading.
No, that's a good point. The other part to this, Val, is this whole vigilante justice thing, with these folks that feel like that they're able to go out and take the law into their own hands and decide, who is should be brought to justice. I'm gonna play a clip real quick, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. This is from the McMichael's trial.
I wouldn't say ordering. I was asking him.
Like nicely and politely, "Please, sir, stop"?
At first, it was not "please, sir, sir," but "Hey, can you stop? Please, yes, stop for a second. Stop for a second." My voice inflection and tone, I was trying to keep the situation calm.
And this is at the time that he's already decided that he doesn't want anything to do with you and has run back down Burford towards Attila.
Yes.
94, the first video ending in 261. Is this what we have?
Yes.
You're backing up, and then he's running away from you.
Yes, ma'am.
And then, is this your truck pulling forward after him?
It is. Yes, ma'am.
So Val, the McMichaels actually went on the stand. Are you surprised that like in the Rittenhouse case, that the defendants are taking the stand and trying to talk on their own behalf?
I'm not surprised at all because they know, the defense knows they have a weak case. And the only thing that can save Travis, I do believe, is the sympathy of the jurors. So he had to put him out there. I disagree with most of the analysts on this that I've heard. They think that the defense did a great job. I don't believe so. I think that the defense tried to come up with a perjury charge on Travis McMichael because he was asked questions about the differences between his statements to the jury and his written statement that he made to the police. And there were differences, and they wanted to know why. That's an assumption. The assumption is that if you can prove that the two stories were not the same and he may have committed perjury, then that means he can have no argument of self-defense. And I'll tell you, I don't go that far. I don't think it is a knockout blow that he can't claim self-defense just because he lied or had a semantical problem with a couple of sentences in his case that in his testimony that he gave to the police. I don't think that was a good strategy on the part of the defense attorney. They had this guy right there. I never heard her one time ask him, "Did you intend to shoot and kill Ahmaud Arbery?"
Right.
Not one time.
Not once. Right.
She just kept asking about, well, on line 16 here in your written statement, you said X. And yesterday you didn't say X, you said X and Y. And, I just don't think she did a good job.
Yeah. I've been worried about some of her tactics. Dr. McFarlane, this whole thing with the vigilantes going out after people. The crux of this case with the McMichaels is that somebody was going in and out of a house that was under construction. And when white people went in and out of the house, nobody called the police and nobody intervened. And it's clear that the McMichaels had some animus towards Black people. I don't know how you get around that.
Oh, this is very clear.
Yeah, so I'd like for you to speak to that.
It's clear. I mean, I don't know. I've lived in neighborhoods before that were under construction, and it was normal for, people in the residents to look at it. In a lot of communities, that's normal because people are in the housing market. They're looking to buy, and they want to look at the floor plan and imagine, oh, well, they did this to their particular, their house. Maybe I could do that. Oh, this is what's the difference in the floor plan. And it gives you a better sense in, what you're going to buy or what you're going to, how you're going to build onto your house. That is normal. Just the idea that when the defendant who went on stand, was discussing his background, his training, his training in law enforcement, his experience in law enforcement, I think the prosecutor asked if he's familiar with the Fifth Amendment, because he tried to get Ahmaud Arbery to confess that he was stealing, lumber, from the property, that he's been the one pilfering unconstructed homes. And just because a Black person decides they don't want to speak to you, they feel like that's a reason, and it's reasonable, and it is fair to unlawfully imprison a Black person because they refuse to have a conversation with you. And that this is actually flying, that he could say this really without any compunction whatsoever, make this acknowledgement, and it not just completely turn the tide against him. And we still think he's going to get off, lets you know that, again, they are making it clear. When I say they, the judicial, branch across, conservative judiciary is making it clear that Black people we're almost back to the days of Dred Scott or Plessy v. Ferguson, that there's no rights that Black people have that any white person is bound to respect. And it seems clear that the most basic tenets of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, it does not apply. It simply does not apply to Black people in this country. We are the perpetual, I'd say, third-class citizen, because even when under LULAC, the Latin, when the Mexican American Association, when they argued to be part of the American corpus, they weren't considered Americans because of their Tex-Mex status and their heritage. They said, well, we are, but we may be a class apart. We're second-class citizens, but we're not them. Those third-class ones over there, right? And that's always the statement that is made. I always want to remind people of that constantly, that we were never even second-class citizens.
Right, we're fighting for it. We're
still fighting to become second-class citizens because we're arguing for civil rights.
Yeah, I hear some music in the background, so that means we need to take a break. So when we come back, we're going to continue talking about criminal justice issues. We're going to talk about Julius Jones over in Oklahoma almost getting executed. We want to talk about the men finally getting exonerated in the Malcolm X case, and a whole bunch more. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But I get it, you're busy, and busy people can't have prediabetes. I read that wrong. They can, okay? Just go to the site.
It has been more than half a century since the assassination of civil rights leader Malcolm X, but now the Manhattan District Attorney is moving to exonerate two of the men convicted in the killing of an icon. A new investigation found that the FBI and the NYPD withheld evidence that might have cleared the men. 55 years after they were convicted of killing Malcolm X in a case that has long been shrouded in controversy, two of the men found guilty in the civil rights leader's assassination are about to have their convictions thrown out by the Manhattan District Attorney. Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam were sentenced to life in prison even though fellow Nation of Islam member and confessed killer Mujahid Abdul Halim, previously known as Thomas Hagen, denied their involvement. Today, lawyers for the two men are relieved by DA Cyrus Vance's decision, albeit a late one. What took so long?
There's no doubt at all that this was the right decision for the DA to make at this point in time, but it's just as clear that this should have happened a long time ago. It never should have happened in the first place.
Malcolm X, an icon and one of the most influential leaders in the Nation of Islam and African American community, was fatally shot on February 21, 1965, in front of his pregnant wife and 3 daughters at New York City's Audubon Ballroom as he was preparing to give a speech, just 1 week after he was firebombed out of his Queens home. He was only 39.
And welcome back to our second segment of the deal. You don't want to know what we talk about in between during the break, folks. But I'm glad you're sticking around. You saw coming back in Malcolm X, a leader who was cut down too early, and there were some men convicted of his murder. And then, lo and behold, so I'll start with you, Nicole. Lo and behold, we find out that J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI told a lie, and the New York City Police Department lied. And 2 innocent men went to jail for a long time, even when the man who actually killed Malcolm X said they didn't do it. How does that happen in America, Nicole?
I mean, it happens with some of the complicity of the Black community to some degree, right? Obviously, some complicity, because I believe when the self-trained journalist and investigator who uncovered the real murderer of Malcolm X found out that he had been actually living in the safe harbor of the Muslim American community in Newark for many years, right? And that was part of what exonerated the men who were just released. That was interesting because it was just something no one wanted to dig up. That was something even in the Black community, no one wanted to uncover. That was such a difficult thing. Now, to the extent that the American the Federal Bureau of Investigation and intelligence services turn, our debates within our community as to what to do into deadly incidents. Now that is 100% on the government, right? Mm-hmm. And if they will find from time to time, if they find, they're going to always find someone who's willing to do the dirty work. And then there will always be those who simply just don't want to create a problem. And so there was a lot of knowledge from what I understand, the Muslim community for many years, and the nationalist community in New York that was aware of it. It was an open secret, but it was never brought to the fore until this Netflix documentary came out.
Yeah, Val, Nicole raised some interesting points here. A lot of times movements are undone from informants, and those informants have to look like the people who are running the movement. Fred Hampton died as a result of there being informants giving the layout of the house to the Chicago Police Department so they could go and gun him down. So talk to me a little bit about this notion of how there's complicity within the community that will even work with somebody like a J. Edgar Hoover to undermine the movements, against Black folk.
Well, it was a perfect timing for J. Edgar and the FBI, because we must remember that prior to Malcolm's death, his murder, that there was some conflict between Malcolm X and Elijah Muhammad and the NOI. And it was rife. The time was there for a lot of people to listen to the FBI, because the FBI always likes to have informants inside of movements in minority communities. You mentioned the Black Panthers and that sort of thing with Fred Hampton. And that's just one. They had them inside of the SCLC and SNCC and NCAA. There's never been a type of organization, minority, Black anyway, that the FBI didn't have or tried to have an informant. And these informants must be prepared to bite the bullet. They go to jail. Some of them have been killed. And, you know, the good soldiers in them, they keep quiet about it, about being an informant anyway. And that makes it worse for the rest of us because the FBI and those kind of people, they continue to do what they're doing. But having been a student and have read a lot about Malcolm X over the years, if you will recall, Ed, during our show, we had Ward Muhammad on our show on a quarterly basis. Ward Muhammad is the son of Elijah Muhammad. And we had him as a regular guest on our show for several years on a quarterly basis to bring up that report. We also had the first imam in the United States military that was stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And right after his installation, we had him on our show, Connections, to talk about what it meant to be an imam, to bring the Muslim presence to the United States Army and the United States military, so that they wouldn't have to go to, Muslims wouldn't have to go to Catholic services or Jewish services or something of that nature. But we've been following this for a long time. And we all that have been following Malcolm X and the NOI and things of that nature, we never gave the FBI or J. Edgar Hoover a pass. We always thought that there was something going on there. We just didn't have the evidence and didn't know what it was, but we never believed the story that the FBI was trying to peddle to us.
Well, you know, one of the things I wanted to bring up is that, you know, Amiri Baraka, I had a good I'd sit down with him at one point, who was from Newark, New Jersey, formerly Leroy Jones. And I wouldn't say we were friends, but we became acquaintances and we kept up with each other up until the time he died. And one of the things he told me the first time I met him was that they are still following us and they're still trying to infiltrate our groups. And I was with him and we were in a bookstore, and the bookstore is known for having books that the government didn't like. And this was well into the 90s, Val. It was like mid to late 90s. And we saw two men with suits on in this bookstore where everybody wore dashikis. And then so me and Amiri came around the corner and we heard a thud and the man's gun dropped out of his coat. And so Amiri turns around, he says, "You see, these motherfuckers are still following me." Which astounded me. You know, I'm in my probably late 20s, early 30s, thinking that we're in a better place in America. And the FBI was still following Amiri Baraka, who was an older man at that point and just needed to be left alone. What could he do at that point? But it crystallized to me how we are not free in America. I know, Nicole, you wanted to say something. I want to make sure.
Just that's why people who are in the Nation of Islam, people in the Black Muslim movements, you know, Black Muslim sects across America, they always were questioning that for years. Like, no one ever accepted that Farrakhan was a part of that. And the reason was because they understood the kind of obedience that Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as they call him, that he commanded among his people. And when he told them to not touch Malcolm X, leave him alone, if they were good in the Nation of Islam, or even, you know, they would not touch him. Like, they might talk junk, they might contribute to an atmosphere by, you know, making sort of like a lot of bravado, you know, maybe threats. But the thing was that Black dissident movements like the Nation of Islam have informants in the government intelligence apparatus as well, right? Like there are people in the Nation of Islam that belong to are members of the military that or people who are at least sympathetic to it. Look at the mayor of New York, the new mayor-elect of New York. He works with he has worked with Farrakhan as a member of the police department of New York City for from the earlier part of his career. And I think it was a statement, and it stuck with me, that in the research that was presented by the lay investigator who uncovered this entire mess, he actually said that, and people kept saying it to him over and over again. It was an saying, and that Elijah Muhammad said that everyone else said, and it was different pockets, same pair of pants. So whether you were a street hustler or a school nurse or a police officer who worked in an internal investigation unit, but you were good with Nation of Islam, he was like, y'all still in the same pair of pants. We're all in the belly of the beast. We're all in the pants. We just got to situate ourselves to be like. So he wasn't against the idea of the spook who sat beside the door.
I was just thinking about that movie. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch. I don't want to cut you off, Nicole, but we're gonna have to take one more break, and when we come back, I want to talk about one last thing. I want to talk about Julius Jones, and then
talk about what you said,
Julius Jones, and Val. We have to talk about G.K. Butterfield and his retirement. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. Do we have a gun?
Why do you ask that, kiddo?
This one's for the real ballers and shot callers, the sisterhood of women in tech. They're discovering cures, building apps, and programming the blockchain. They're CEOs, worldwide hustlers who can make it rain. They're tearing down the old boys club and seeing big gains. Because when women in tech come together, you know they make that change.
And welcome back to our third and final segment of the deal today for Saturday, November 20th, 2021. You have been listening to us go on about a lot of stuff on the criminal justice side. There's one other issue I want to talk about before we move on to politics, and that's Julius Jones. He was hours away from being executed in Oklahoma for a murder he said he did not commit. There's not a lot to say about it because the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board said that his sentence should be commuted, and the governor waited until the very last possible moment to do something about it. I have been in a death chamber in this North Carolina death chamber when North Carolina started executions again. I won't say I was fortunate. I don't know what the word is, but I was, as a reporter at the time, I was able to go in prior to the execution to see the death chamber, and that particular execution got stopped, so it didn't occur. But seeing the death chamber is very sobering. To know that somebody's sitting in a 4x6 cell, next to the place where you're going to end your life, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I'll just ask one quick question. Give me a quick answer to this. What was Governor of Oklahoma trying to do? Was he trying to flex a little bit, Val? and try to show that he's still tough on crime, despite the fact that even the Republican-controlled parole board said that this young man's or now old man sentence should have been commuted?
He was trying to play politics. He's still a political animal, and he knew that if he just knee-jerk went with the parole board, that some people on the right would not like it. And that if he, in fact, didn't listen to the parole board at all, lots of people on the left and in the middle wouldn't like it. So he called himself, playing the middle, and wait right up until the last minute and then go ahead and do what he was asked to do previously. And I think that it may have worked for him. He got a little popularity out of this. There are some people who think now that he did the right thing, and I think he finally saw the light, and well, that's all he wanted. And he still hadn't. The guy's still in jail and will be there until he dies. And that's why some of the people on his side saying it's not over yet. We plan to do some things to get him exonerated and get him out of jail altogether, because we still believe he's innocent, not just that he didn't deserve to die at the hands of the state, but we believe he's totally innocent. So we're glad that he did not get murdered by the state, but it's not over yet.
Yeah, not over by a long shot. There's still some more. Dr. McFarlane, had you followed the Jones case?
And especially his mother's response was so heartfelt.
Well, can you hold on just a second? Let's play a clip of that, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Being on top of the world and being under the world. Yesterday, I felt like nobody, because of some of the things that happened, and I wasn't able to give my baby a hug from my baby. And today I feel like I'm on top of the world. I feel like dancing, shouting.
Yes.
You name it.
Yes.
I feel it.
Yes.
My cup is full.
So that's Julius Jones's mother. Yeah, go ahead and.
I certainly felt her sense of relief and hope, but also felt her deep sadness of not having to be able to really embrace her son over these last 20 almost going on
25 years, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's really heartbreaking, but I believe that if they've come this far and she keeps we keep pushing, that perhaps maybe he will be exonerated and will not have to complete his full sentence. Perhaps, I hope, maybe the governor is going to hand it off to the next governor or something. They do it in pieces. Maybe, I don't know, the way these politicians behave, and they always have some long game in mind. There's always a political reason to everything. It's unfortunate that this man's life has been caught up in this horrible whirlwind of politics. Luckily, he wasn't executed much sooner, but because of Oklahoma's botched capital punishment system, maybe we can still hope. We can have hope.
Yeah. In a way, Oklahoma's ineptness probably saved his life. It gave him some more years to be able to fight this. You know what? We're going to switch gears drastically. We're going to talk about politics. And one piece of politics that's bothered me the last couple of days, Val, is we found out that G.K. Butterfield is not going to run for re-election for the U.S. House seat. He's a friend of this program. He's on connections on a regular basis. We know G.K., both of us know him personally. So it's a blow to North Carolinians. They don't even realize what he does for them. But politics is in the way. Let's look at the statement, part of the statement from G.K. Butterfield, and let's talk about it on the other side.
On January 1st, 1989, after practicing law in my home community of Wilson, North Carolina for 14 years, I began my career in public service as a resident Superior Court judge. After serving 15 years in the North Carolina judiciary, including the honor of serving on the North Carolina Supreme Court, I was elected to Congress and have proudly represented the people of the 1st Congressional District for nearly 18 years. Every 10 years, the North Carolina legislature enacts a new congressional map. The map that was recently enacted by the legislature is a partisan map. It's racially gerrymandered. It will disadvantage African American communities all across the 1st Congressional District. I am disappointed, terribly disappointed with the Republican majority legislature for again gerrymandering our state's congressional districts and putting their party politics over the best interests of North Carolinians. While I am hopeful that the courts will ultimately overturn this partisan map and see that a fair map is enacted, I have made the difficult decision that I will not seek re-election to the United States House of Representatives. It is time for me to retire.
So Val, that's G.K. Butterfield. The last few weeks, we have been talking about the gerrymandering by the North Carolina House. And here we have, I won't even say a casualty, the writings on the wall. They have written this thing to make it so difficult for Democrats to even have seats, even though Democrats are the majority of the electorate in North Carolina. Republicans make up about 33%. The way they have it fixed, Val, it looks like it may be something like 11-3. First, talk to me about the impact of losing somebody that with the experience that G.K. Butterfield has, but also the difficulty is going to be if somebody tries to step in and take up the mantle that he's leaving.
Well, it's compounded by the senior member of our congressional delegation, that being David Price, who was in the 4th Congressional District. He announced earlier that he had had enough and he's not coming back. So now we have that being compounded by G.K. Butterfield's decision not to come back. And, on Connections, we just had Deborah Ross on to talk about her positions and things. Looks like she's going to be coming back. But what they've done in this redistricting, Ed, they meaning the Republicans, is they've drawn the maps so that Democrats have to choose which other Democrat they want to run against. Or the second choice is to place themselves in a district that is overwhelmingly red or Republican. That's how they've drawn these things. So G.K. makes the decision that I don't want to run against Alma Adams, or I don't want to run against Kathy Manning, right? So or Deborah Ross. So what I'm going to do is leave, because if you may try to make me run against Virginia Fox or one of those types of people, there's no way I can win when the Democratic population is 10-15% in that particular district that you've drawn up. So I'll tell you, gerrymandering wins. And we go back all the time to that case of Chiavallo v. Washington, when the Supreme Court made the decision that that partisan gerrymandering is fine as long as we don't have race involved in it in an obvious way. So what you've done is just allowed state legislatures to gerrymander off the cliff and do whatever they want. And that's why I said many, many weeks ago, Ed, if the Republican Party doesn't take back the House, it's because they're not trying, because they have control of most of the state legislatures in the country. And this is a redistricting year. So when they draw the lines for the new congressional districts, they're going to draw them in such a way that Republicans have the advantage. So if they don't take it back, it's because they ain't trying.
They're idiots if they don't take it back. Dr. McFarlane, you're around young people. And one of the problems with this also is that a lot of times young people don't understand the import of those seats below the president, right? They only turn out when it's a presidential election. And so we're in a double whammy here that it's going to be an off-year election and it's all this gerrymandering that Val just talked about. Do you hear any talk at all amongst young people about the importance of participating? I mean, what I hear a lot of them saying is they don't care, or all of them are the same, or it doesn't matter, or whatever. What do you hear if you put your ear to the ground?
I think what's going to happen is the Democratic Party is going to have to mobilize in other ways. Or not just the Democratic Party, but progressive movements in general. I want to say that because we're in a two-party system, and so far the only thing that's progressive is somewhat progressive is the Democratic Party. But I think it's getting harder and harder to get young people to identify with a party that has people like Joe Manchin in it, and even to some degree a Joe Biden. You look at like his early career; he's a great centrist. But you have to realize too that like they're going to have to mobilize them with things like younger people, marijuana legalization. They're going to have to, if they want to get them on these off years, the Democratic Party is going to have to be really intelligent. It's going to have to be very creative, and they're going to have to put things on the ballot like marijuana legalization on off years. They're going to have to do something. One thing they're doing in the area in North Carolina is they're trying to mobilize young people around the effort to stop giving out tickets for expired tags, for bench warrants for lapsed insurance, people losing their license, going to jail because their license is expired or their tags are expired, things like that. So I think if we can make young people connect to things that really are affecting them, like they are, more likely to run into those kinds of problems. But we don't really get that word out. We just say, well, while G.K. Butterfield and Alma Adamses and, the other members of the Congressional Black Caucus have been really important. They've also, I think in 1999, they kind of are the architects of their own demise because of the embrace of gerrymandering, the way some political scientists might pronounce it. But they are in that they embraced GPS districting very early, whereas the larger Democratic Party, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, was really against it. But because it was embraced and it was really the Congressional Black Caucus in many ways sided with the Republican Party 25 years ago, right? There continues to be this legacy where they knew that if it continued this way, that you would have less of a likelihood to have Black congressional representation in terms of descriptive representation, but you would have a harder time to get substantive progressive legislation and lawmakers in office, meaning people who necessarily don't fall across the line fall completely within the line of Democratic platform issues, but also have a lot of reach and crossover appeal, and also to bring in other issues that are not really on the plank, don't exist as planks yet in most Democratic Party politics.
Well, I think a good segue into this whole progressive and where we stand for people who are on the left is the Build Back Better plan, Val. I want to play a clip of what happened over in the House the other night.
Days are 213. The Build Back Better bill is passed.
For House Democrats, loud cheers at the end of a long road, as this morning they passed President Biden's Build Back Better Act. The bill covers a host of major issues, combating climate change, providing universal preschool while slashing childcare costs for younger kids, expanding government health care coverage, and creating more subsidized affordable housing. In all, some $1.7 trillion in new programs and spending. Democrats provide money for that by increasing taxes on big corporations and the wealthiest Americans. Last night, after weeks of drama, the bill seemed on track for quick passage until the last Republican to speak, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, took the floor.
Every page of all this new Washington spending will be paid for or borrowed from you, the American hardworking taxpayer.
Technically given 1 minute to speak, as a party leader, McCarthy has the right to go as long as he likes. He turned that 1 minute into 8.5 hours of speaking against the Build Back Better Act, breaking the record set by Pelosi for the longest speech on the House floor. It made history and instantly internet memes. From the House cloakroom next to the chamber, Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez took to Instagram to mock.
Look at all of those different colored ties and haircuts. I have never seen a more diverse Republican Party than the one behind Kevin McCarthy right now.
So Val, people are clapping, Nancy Pelosi hits the gavel, Build Back Better passed. Then Kevin McCarthy goes on his 8 hour say that diatribe against Build Back Better. You hear a litany of things that Build Back Better is supposed to do, daycare, blah, blah, blah. We talked about this before, Val, that we know that the Democrats are the only ones actually putting legislation on the table that would actually do shit, right? Republicans are always wanting anti-stuff. They want to eliminate abortion. They want to eliminate, gay marriage, whatever it is. They're the polar opposite of those progressive policies. But the Democrats have become held hostage to those centrist Democrats, those ideas out of the Bill Clinton, neoliberal group, that kind of were
the
DLC folks, right? Talk to me first about this legislation, because it's still going to get beat up over in the Senate. Joe Manchin, who Dr. McFarlane mentioned, and Kristen Sinema, who we talk about almost weekly on this program, are not going to let it go softly into the night. They're going to have a lot to say about that, what comes out of the Senate. First, talk about Build Back Better. What does it do for us? And then what will actually emerge from the Senate?
Bill, this gets to the core of Democratic problems in the 21st century, that I don't think enough Democratic strategists who have the ear of our Democratic leaders really aware of what's going on. You were talking to Dr. McFarlane a few seconds ago about the feelings of the students and those kinds of things. I remember when I was in the classroom and we were talking about surveys and questionnaires and polls and how to conduct these kinds of things. And the thing that students always get hung up on is independent variables and dependent variables. And I try to tell them, when we're talking about immutable traits, things that you can't change, right? They are independent variables, like, your race, your age, and things like that, your gender, your birth gender, and that sort of thing. But when you're talking about how you feel about abortion, when you talk about whether or not reverse discrimination, reverse racism is alive and well, and whether or not Blacks still get too much affirmative action, those are core things. Those are the things that motivate people to come out and vote. And I don't care how many bridges you build or how much money you put in medical leave, you're not going to change persons' core values over that. And that's what too many Democrats don't understand. They really think if they go out and tell people, look, you're going to be able to make sure we can argue about how much money people spend on prescription drugs. And you're going to have daycare starting at 3 and 4 years old for everybody, and so forth and so on. And this guy is sitting there thinking, I'm tired of being fired because they had to hire another Black guy. So you can build all the bridges you want. I ain't voting for no more Democrats that's getting me fired from my job because they got to hire a Black guy. Democrats refuse to believe this is a reality. And there are too many people, white people, who think that way. And you can sell as many Build Back Better plans as you want. A lot of them ain't buying it, okay? And if we put all of our eggs in that basket, that people are gonna say, oh my God, look what we've got. Let me go vote for the Democrats. They're doing things for us. You need to wake up and smell the coffee, guys. Yeah. That ain't reality. And that's why we keep losing all of these races. Republicans found out a long time ago, and I'll leave you with this metaphor here. You can run around in front of the group and declare yourself the drum major because you figured out exactly what the group is about. Or you can get on the doggone caboose of the train and drag your feet to slow it down. Democrats need to get off the caboose, dragging your feet, and run out in front and be leaders. Be leaders and tell people this is the way we need to go. This is what we need to do. Instead of playing these offshoot stuff of, I'm gonna build you a better bridge. I'm gonna make it so that you can get to work faster. I'm gonna clean up the air, make sure you don't drink water out of lead pipes and that sort of thing. And I ain't gonna worry about what you feel about abortion and what you think about affirmative action. I ain't gonna worry about that kind of stuff. I'm gonna just build you bridges and you're gonna come vote for me.
Yeah, because
Amen.
Amen. Because the Republicans already figured it out.
They done figured it out. They got in front of the parade and became drumbeats.
And they're still going to use the passage of the Build Back Better because already Republicans were sending out letters to their constituents saying, "See what I did for you?
Yeah,
I'm getting your bridge built," and they didn't even vote for the shit. So anyway, look, I don't want to run out of time. I'm so happy to have Dr. Nicole McFarlane back with us. She's been gallivanting all over the world, and she took time to come in and sit in with us today. You know what we do at the end of the show, Dr. McFarlane? We always ask, what do you got coming up, or what do we got to look forward to? What do you got to tell us today?
Oh, I'm looking forward to continuing to gallivant around the world. Actually, I'm working on my writing, but when I have something more substantive or something more concrete to talk about, I'll definitely tell you what it is.
Good enough. We'll take that. And Professor Atkinson, what do you got for us this week?
I'm going to encourage everybody to tune in and listen to Connections during the Thanksgiving weekend, because we have a special guest, Congressperson Deborah Ross, and I think she's going to talk about some things that many people are interested in, because there's a lot of movement going on in the United States Congress. So tune in for that. That's Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah, so me, I'm always working on a bunch of stuff. Please go out to The Deal with edclark.com. My column this week is it's entitled 1619, the year America really started hating Black people. And you'll understand the title once you read the piece. But what made me write it is this is my life. I was listening to some old speeches, and one on Martin Luther King's speech, and it was the speech called Birth of a New Nation. It's from 1957. And in the third paragraph, he leads off with, in 1619, that's how the paragraph starts. And in the speech, he was trying to explain why Africa was in such a mess, but also why Black Americans were connected to Africa. And it all started in 1619 with the slaves arriving in Jamestown, and then America needing more slaves, which led to the colonization of Africa and the importation of slaves into America. And he asked the question, why do white people not want to deal with the history starting in 1619? So read that piece on The Deal with edclark.com on the way out. You're going to hear part of that speech. So what you need to do is go do something good for somebody today, and then come back next week and we'll do this all over again. You've been watching The Deal. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Build Back Better bill is passed.
Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the second count of the information, Richard McGinnis, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the third count of the information, unknown male, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the fourth count of the information, Anthony Huber, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty. As to the fifth count of the information, Gage Grosskreutz, we the jury find the defendant Kyle H. Rittenhouse not guilty.